Hello and the warmest of welcomes to each and every one of you watching today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. Before we step into the incredible and almost unbelievable world we're exploring in this video, I want to take a sincere moment to send my very best wishes your way. To you, your family, and your friends, wherever you are, I genuinely hope you are feeling happy, positive, and are in the very best of health. Now, prepare to be amazed by one of the most cunning and elaborate deceptions in the entire natural world, a strategy so clever it seems like it must be the plot of a fantasy novel. I am talking about certain species of orchids that have perfected the art of trickery, going so far as to perfectly mimic female insects in order to attract amorous male pollinators. This is not a vague resemblance. It is a full-scale sensory con that involves sight, smell, and touch, all orchestrated by a flower to ensure its survival. To understand why a flower would go to such extreme lengths, we first need to talk about the fundamental goal of any flowering plant, reproduction. Plants are rooted in place, so they cannot seek out mates. Instead, they must rely on intermediaries to move their pollen from one flower to another. This process is called pollination, and the intermediaries are pollinators, which are most often insects like bees, butterflies, and flies. The typical deal between a flower and a pollinator is a fair trade. The flower offers a reward, usually in the form of sweet, energy-rich nectar. The insect visits the flower to collect this nectar, and in doing so, it accidentally gets dusted with pollen grains. When it flies to the next flower, it transfers some of that pollen, thus fertilizing the second flower and enabling it to produce seeds. This is a mutualistic relationship, both parties benefit. But in some environments, competition for pollinator attention is fierce. Imagine a crowded meadow with hundreds of flowers all shouting for attention, all offering nectar. How does one flower stand out? Some orchids found a way to cheat the system. They decided to stop offering a reward altogether. Instead of producing precious nectar, which costs a lot of energy to make, they evolved to offer a different kind of incentive, one that is far more powerful and irresistible to a specific insect, the promise of love, or more accurately, the promise of mating. This strategy is known as sexual deception, and it is one of the most precise and specialized adaptations in nature. The orchid does not just vaguely look like an insect, it has evolved over millennia to become a flawless replica of a female insect, specifically tailored to fool the males of that species. The level of detail involved in this deception is staggering. It encompasses three main components: visual mimicry, olfactory mimicry, and tactile mimicry. The orchid must convincingly look, smell, and feel like a female insect to successfully trick a male into attempting to mate with it, a behavior known as pseudocopulation. This entire elaborate ruse has one sole purpose: as the male insect attempts to copulate with the flower, the orchid's clever mechanism ensures that pollen packets, called pollinia, are glued to his body. Frustrated and confused, he will fly away and likely fall for the same trick at another orchid of the same species, thereby completing the pollen transfer. The orchid gets pollinated without offering a drop of nectar, and the male insect gets nothing but a lesson in heartbreak. It is a brilliant, if somewhat cruel, evolutionary strategy. Let's break down this masterful deception, starting with the visual mimicry. The flowers of these orchids have petals that are shaped, colored, and textured to resemble the body of a female insect. For example, the famous duck orchid, found in Australia, has a labellum, or lip petal, that looks exactly like the head and body of a female sawfly. Another astounding example is the hammer orchid, also from Australia, which mimics a female thinning wasp. Its flower has a single, hinged petal that looks like the wingless, ant-like body of the female wasp. The color matching is perfect, often incorporating the same shades of brown, red, and iridescence found on the insect's body. Some even have patterns that mimic the segments of an insect's abdomen. From the perspective of a male insect flying overhead or perched nearby, the flower is indistinguishable from a potential mate. But looks are not enough. The most critical part of the deception is the smell. Male insects, especially wasps and bees, locate females over long distances primarily through pheromones, which are powerful chemical sex hormones released into the air. These orchids have learned to brew this exact chemical cocktail. Through an incredible process of coevolution, the orchids produce volatile compounds that are chemically identical to the sex pheromones of the female insect. The specific blend of hydrocarbons and other compounds is so precise that it is irresistible to the male insect. He follows this seductive scent trail, which leads him directly to the flower, believing he is about to find a receptive female. Scientists have studied these scents and found that they are often complex mixtures of alkenes and alkynes, long-chain hydrocarbons that are unique to the target insect species. The orchid's ability to synthesize these specific chemicals is a testament to the power of natural selection. The flowers that produced a scent that was even slightly more accurate were more likely to attract pollinators and therefore more likely to reproduce and pass on their genes, gradually refining the scent over generations until it became a perfect match. The final piece of the puzzle is tactile mimicry, the feel of the flower. Once the male insect has been lured in by the sight and the smell, he must be convinced to stay long enough for the pollination mechanism to work. He lands on the flower and begins to attempt to mate with it. The texture of the petal is crucial here. Many of these orchids have petals that are covered in tiny hairs or have a specific velvety texture that mimics the feel of the female insect's body. This tactile confirmation is the last step in convincing the male that he has found a genuine mate. As he moves into position, his precise movements trigger the orchid's pollination mechanism. In the hammer orchid, for instance, when the male wasp attempts to fly away with the female, the hinged petal he is holding onto swings over and slams him against the column of the flower, which is the reproductive part. During this violent action, a sticky pollen packet is glued to his thorax or abdomen. In other orchids, like the bee orchid, which mimics a female bee, the male's attempts to copulate simply bring him into contact with a glue-like substance that attaches the pollen to his head. Once the pollen is attached, the insect eventually gives up and flies away. He has received no reward, but he has been loaded with a package of pollen. The evolutionary implications of this relationship are profound. This is not a general trick, it is highly specific. Each species of sexually deceptive orchid typically targets only one specific species of insect. This specificity creates an incredibly tight evolutionary arms race. If the insect species were to change its pheromone recipe slightly, the orchid would be in trouble. Conversely, if the orchid's mimicry were to become less accurate, the insects would learn to avoid it. This forces the orchid to continuously refine its deception to near perfection. It also means that these orchids are often very rare and found only in specific locations where their target insect lives. Their survival is inextricably linked to the survival of that one insect species. This specialization is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. While other flowers cater to multiple pollinator species, these orchids put all their eggs in one basket. But when it works brilliantly, allowing them to thrive without expending energy on producing nectar. For the male insect, the story is one of repeated deception. Research suggests that they do not easily learn to avoid these orchids. The drive to mate is so instinctually powerful that it overrides any learning from previous negative experiences. He may be fooled multiple times in a single day, visiting one orchid after another. While this seems like a raw deal for the insect, it is actually crucial for the orchid. If the insect learned too quickly, the pollination strategy would fail. The fact that he remains driven to seek out the scent ensures that he will carry the pollen from one flower to the next, completing the vital process of cross-pollination. From a broader perspective, this intricate dance of deception highlights the immense complexity of the natural world. It shows that evolution is not always about strength and size, it is often about wit, cunning, and the ability to exploit the weaknesses and instincts of others. These orchids are master manipulators, using sensory illusions to ensure their legacy continues. The discovery of this phenomenon was a landmark moment in botany. For a long time, naturalists could not understand why these orchids never seemed to produce nectar and why only specific, single species of insects ever visited them. It was through patient observation that scientists like Australian botanist Edith Coleman in the early 20th century pieced together the puzzle, witnessing the male insects attempting to mate with the flowers. Today, this knowledge helps conservation efforts. Understanding that the survival of a rare orchid is dependent on the survival of a specific insect emphasizes the importance of protecting entire ecosystems, not just individual species. The story of the sexually deceptive orchid is more than just a curious fact, it is a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of life and the astonishing, often bizarre, lengths to which evolution will go to find a solution. It reveals a world where beauty is often a trap, where scent is a lie, and where a flower's survival depends on its ability to perfect the art of the con. Thank you for joining me to explore this truly wondrous strategy.